Christmas night, a tea, a luxury restaurant. My sister got a designer bag, my parents a luxury trip. When my turn came, my sister handed me an envelope. I opened it. Inside was the bill. My mother smirked. That's why we invited you, right? Ha! My sister laughed. Of course, who else would pay? The family laughed. Then the waiter returned with unexpected news. Looking out the window of her small Chicago apartment at the falling snow, Amy Bradley sighed. That tight feeling in her chest as Christmas approached wouldn't go away. It had been 7 years since she started working as an editor, doing proofreading and editing for literary works at a small publishing house, leading a relatively stable life. However, a shadow of not enough always followed her. This shadow grew darker especially when she returned home. Her father, Richard Bradley, was a successful businessman in real estate development. Her mother, Martha, owned a high-end boutique. And her sister Brooke worked as an executive in her father's company, having even been featured in a local business magazine as a young female entrepreneur. Amy, how long are you going to keep being a bookworm? Are you going to be okay with that salary in the future? Why can't you be more ambitious like Brooke? Conversations at home always wrapped around her with such words. Treated as the underachiever of the family since childhood, Amy could only quietly nod. She picked up her cell phone and opened a message from her mother that had arrived a few days ago. We're having a family dinner at a Lucille for Christmas. 7 o'clock? Be there. Short and commanding. Not a message asking for a response. Lucille was the most difficult to book high-end French restaurant in Chicago. Her father had probably secured seats through his connections. Amy stood up and sat at her computer. On her desk were stacks of cookbooks, and on the wall hung photos of cuisine from around the world. Amy had a passion she couldn't tell her family about: cooking. For 4 years, she had been running a blog called Amy's Kitchen Diary, devoting her weekends to recipe development and photography. Her subscription readership was small but steadily growing. And recently she had begun receiving small writing requests from cooking magazines. But she couldn't tell her family. She knew they would dismiss it, saying, "Such a hobby won't make you any money." On her laptop screen was her article posted yesterday, a Christmas recipe for orange and rosemary roasted duck. In the comments section was a message from a reader. I tried serious cooking for the first time using Amy's recipe. My family was impressed. Such words became her small source of confidence. Amy slipped her phone into her pocket and opened her closet. A family dinner after so long. What should she wear? Her eyes settled on her only luxury item, a deep green cashmere dress she had splurged on with last year's bonus. This year, she whispered softly. A family gathering for Christmas after 3 years. This year, maybe she could join in the family conversations. This year, perhaps they would see her value. This year, she might be treated as a real member of the family. With these hopes, Amy took out the dress. Amy took a deep breath as she stood in front of Lucille. Warm light spilled from the restaurant windows, creating a Christmas-like bustle. She looked down at her feet as she stepped out of the taxi, smoothing the wrinkles of her green dress with slightly trembling fingers. No more running away, she told herself, and pushed open the door. The inside of the restaurant was adorned with elegant decorations, with chandelier light creating a luxurious atmosphere. Sommeliers and chefs chatted with customers, and French classical music filled the space. The Bradley reservation. The receptionist recognized Amy and guided her immediately. On her way to the private room in the back, Amy couldn't help but stop at the beautifully displayed dishes, like in a showcase. Perfect plating, the colors of ingredients, even the way the steam rose, everything was like a work of art. Someday, I too. With that thought in her heart, Amy headed toward the reserved table. "Oh, you finally came," Martha, who was already seated, sent her daughter a scrutinizing look from head to toe. A pearl necklace gleamed at her neck, and dressed in a Chanel suit, her mother embodied perfect beauty as always. "Sorry I'm late," Amy said in a small voice. "As usual," Richard, her father, said, while checking his watch. He was a man in his mid-50s with distinctive gray temples, dressed in an expensive suit tonight as well, exuding the dignity of a successful man. "Sis, that dress. You tried, didn't you?" Brooke said with a refined smile. She wore a designer brand dress with diamond earrings and perfect makeup, looking as if she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Comparing herself to her sister, Amy suddenly felt her dress seemed cheap. Well, let's have a toast. Her father raised a glass filled with vintage champagne. To another year where the whole family is healthy and successful. As everyone clinked glasses, Amy pondered her own success. Her blog had just been selected as an up-and-coming blogger by a culinary website last month. Should she tell her family? But she swallowed those words and just smiled. Brooke, tell us about your achievements this year. At her father's question, Brooke began explaining about a new real estate development project she was handling. The conversation flowed to work talk, gossip about acquaintances, and political topics. Amy just played the role of listener, occasionally nodding. As the main dish ended and dessert was being served, Martha suddenly said, "By the way, we haven't exchanged Christmas presents yet." She stood up and took out beautifully wrapped boxes from a shopping bag she had brought. First, for Brooke. Martha handed a large box to Brooke. As Brooke eagerly unwrapped it, a latest designer bag emerged. "Oh my! This is the one with a 3-month waiting list, even with a reservation," Brooke exclaimed. Next, Father gave Martha her present. It was a 2-week vacation voucher to a luxury resort. "I've already made reservations for next month," Father said proudly. Amy waited with some trepidation for her turn. She had prepared small presents for all 3 of them, limited editions of books she had edited, and homemade Christmas cookies. Not expensive, but gifts she had put her heart into. "Brooke, the present for Amy?" Martha gave Brooke a meaningful look. Brooke smiled sweetly and handed a small envelope to Amy. "It's something special." With a mix of expectation and anxiety, Amy carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. As she read it, the blood drained from her face. It was the bill for the dinner. "What is this?" "It's your present. The cost of this meal." "Please pay it," Martha said loudly. "It's only natural, right?" Brooke said with a laugh. "You're always depending on us, so it's about time you contributed something to the family, don't you think?" "That's right. It will be a good opportunity to develop a sense of independence," Father chimed in. Amy couldn't move, staring at the bill. Over $200 per person for the high-end French meal for 4. It was equivalent to her salary for a week. "This is a joke, right?" she said in a hoarse voice. Martha raised an eyebrow. "You've always been a drag on the family, haven't you? From your student days with grades no one could be proud of, to your job at an unknown small publishing house, and now your salary." Amy trembled. Desperately holding back tears that threatened to overflow, she slowly took out her wallet, praying her credit card wouldn't exceed its limit. "Excuse me." A quiet voice approached their table. Looking up, there stood a man in his early 40s wearing a dark suit. His eyes were a deep blue, and his face held both kindness and dignity. "A message from the owner for our guests," said the waiter standing behind the man politely. "The entire meal today is the owner's treat." While the whole family wore expressions of surprise, only Amy made eye contact with the man. There was something special in his gaze, understanding, empathy, and above all, respect. Jacob Monroe, the man introduced himself, giving Amy a small bow. "I'm the owner of a Lucille. Thank you for dining with us today." "The owner?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "It's an honor to receive a personal greeting from you." Jacob Monroe did not directly respond to Richard's words, but quietly surveyed everyone at the table. His eyes seemed to harbor some deep intention beyond mere social pleasantries. "I apologize for the unpleasant experience you had in our restaurant," Jacob said. Martha and Brooke tensed their faces. They must have realized he had overheard their earlier conversation. "No, it's not." Amy hurriedly squeezed out words, feeling her face grow hot with embarrassment. "Actually, I'm a fan of yours." Jacob's words surprised everyone at the table. Amy herself looked the most surprised. "A fan of mine? You're Amy Bradley of Amy's Kitchen Diary, aren't you?" Jacob said with a smile. "The recipe for orange and rosemary roasted duck you posted last week was wonderful. My head chef was impressed as well." "What are you talking about?" Brooke asked curiously. "Sis, you write a blog?" Amy was at a loss for words. She never imagined her secret passion would be revealed to her family in this way. And to think that the owner of Lucille read her blog. "I've been following it for about a year," Jacob continued. "It's a wonderful blog that conveys your passion for cooking, respect for ingredients, And above all, your desire to connect with people through food. Martha stared at Amy in astonishment. You've been doing something like that? Why did you keep quiet about it? Because I thought no one would be interested if I said anything, Amy answered in a small voice. There are always those who are interested, Jacob said gently. I was moved by how you value time with your family on such a Christmas night. That's why I have a proposition for you. He took a business card from his pocket and handed it to Amy. Golden letters floated on it, reading, Monroe Restaurant Group. We operate 5 restaurants in Chicago and New York, including Lucille. We're planning to launch a new project next year, a food culture magazine and website called Taste of Chicago. Jacob looked straight into Amy's eyes and said, I'd like you to join us as a regular columnist. A columnist? Amy couldn't believe her ears. Yes. Introducing hidden gems in Chicago, suggesting recipes using seasonal ingredients, cultural reflections on food. I'd like you to write from your perspective. Of course, with a proper salary and credit. The atmosphere at the table changed. Richard looked at Jacob with newfound respect, and Brooke was so surprised her mouth remained open. Martha suddenly changed her attitude toward her daughter. Amy, how wonderful. Martha suddenly raised her tone. To think our daughter would be directly scouted by a famous restaurant owner. Amy narrowed her eyes at Martha's complete about face. It was hard to believe these were the words of the same person who had been looking down on her just minutes ago. If you're interested, I'd also like to introduce you to our new real estate development project. We have properties perfect for new restaurant expansions. Perhaps this is not the time for such discussions. Jacob interrupted Richard with a polite but firm voice. Tonight is Christmas Eve. Business talk can wait for another occasion. Then he turned back to Amy. What do you say? I'd love to talk in more detail at my office next week. Amy's mind was still confused. She couldn't tell if this development was real, or if she was dreaming. But the sincerity in Jacob's eyes, and the fact that he had actually read her blog, moved her heart. She finally answered, I'd love to hear more. Wonderful? Jacob smiled with satisfaction. How about Monday at 2 p.m. next week? I'll be waiting at my office. He gave a slight bow to everyone and said, Please enjoy your time here. We have special Christmas cocktails prepared after dessert before leaving. After a moment of silence, Brooke spoke up. Sis, what's going on? How does someone like him know about your blog? Yes, Amy. Why did you keep such an important thing secret? Martha also asked. Amy took a deep breath. She felt it was time to finally express her voice that had been suppressed for so long. I've been writing a food blog for 4 years. I started it as a record of my cooking experiments, but gradually readers increased. She began to gain confidence in her words. Last month we exceeded 100,000 page views, and I've started receiving writing requests from several cooking magazines. Brooke was speechless. Is that a big deal? For a food blog, it's doing quite well. Amy proudly stated her achievements for the first time. My readers are mainly women in their 30s to 50s who want to try authentic cooking. Their comments and feedback are my driving force. As Amy spoke, she felt confidence welling up from within. A passionate expression that she had never shown in front of her family appeared on her face. Recently, I've been writing not just about cooking but about food culture in general, introducing small food shops and markets in Chicago, how to choose seasonal ingredients, homemade preserves. Richard, listening to his daughter's story, looked at her as a business person for the first time. Martha had never seen her daughter speak so eloquently and confidently. Why didn't you tell us? Martha asked. Her voice had a gentleness not present before. Amy hesitated for a moment but decided to answer honestly. Because I thought you would ridicule me if I told you. Silence fell over the table. Amy's words struck their hearts. They seemed to realize for the first time how much they had hurt Amy. We didn't mean to, Martha began but couldn't continue. But it's different now, Amy said quietly. Now I know my own worth. And there are people who recognize it. She looked in the direction Jacob had gone. This meeting with him didn't feel like a mere coincidence. It felt as if a door that had been closed for a long time had opened just a little tonight. The dessert plates were brought over. Amy picked up her fork and quietly broke the surface of the chocolate mousse. 1 year later during the Christmas season, Chicago was again covered in snow. Amy finished her final proofreading at the He Taste of Chicago editorial office and closed her laptop. Outside the window, the city's illuminations began to shine in the early dusk. Her life had changed dramatically over the past year. Since accepting Jacob's offer, her career had skyrocketed. What started as a weekly column had grown due to reader response, and now her feature Amy's Taste Discovery was the magazine's flagship project. Her online articles consistently recorded the highest views, and last month, she had signed a contract for her first cookbook. "Amy, is the manuscript ready?" Editor-in-Chief Sarah approached her desk. "Yes. I just sent it. This time, it's a Christmas special with the theme Family Table. Looking forward to reading it." Sarah smiled. "By the way, are you coming to the holiday party tonight?" "Jacob is looking forward to it." Amy felt her cheeks heat up. Her relationship with Jacob had started as a purely business partnership, but over time a special bond had formed between them. Their shared passion for food, desire to please others, and above all, their mutual recognition of each other's worth. These things drew them together. "Of course I'll be there," Amy replied. "It starts at 7, right?" After Sarah nodded and walked away, Amy's smartphone rang. Looking at the screen, it was an email from her mother. She took a deep breath before opening it. "Amy, I need to talk to you about something. Please contact me as soon as possible." "Mother." Amy frowned. Contact from her mother had significantly decreased over the past few months. Since that night, her relationship with her family had subtly changed. Though they offered words of congratulations on the surface, it was clear they had complex feelings about her success. Especially recently, rumors about her father's company had been concerning her. She had heard that Richard Bradley Real Estate Development was facing a major lawsuit due to serious defects discovered in a luxury condominium development they had undertaken. Amy hesitantly made the call. "Amy?" Her mother's voice was mixed with fatigue. "You may have heard, we're in a difficult situation right now." Martha's voice trembled. "Your father's company has been sued, and Brooke was involved in the project too." "I know," Amy said quietly. "It was reported in the newspapers." "We need funds," Martha began. "Since you're successful now, I thought maybe you could help." Amy was at a loss for words. The memory of last Christmas came flooding back. The humiliation of being handed that bill. And now, they were asking her for money. "The Christmas incident was just a joke," Martha added as if making an excuse. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We're family, aren't we? Family should help each other, right?" Amy gazed at the snowy landscape outside the window and thought deeply, not out of anger or vengeance, but how to respond in a truly correct way. "Mom?" She finally spoke. "I don't have enough money to save your business. True, I'm earning more than before, but this is just the beginning of my career." "But your boyfriend, Jacob." "I'm not going to ask him," Amy said firmly. "Besides, money alone won't solve the fundamental problem." On the other end of the phone, Martha could be heard sobbing. "Listen," Amy continued in a gentle but resolute voice. "You should think about solving this on your own. Create a plan to rebuild the company, respond sincerely to the lawsuit, and above all, you need to reconsider your way of doing business." "But how?" "I don't have expertise in business," Amy said. "But I do know about the courage to start life over. Think about me a year ago. What is it that you truly want to do? What do you want to cherish? Maybe you should start by looking at that." After a long silence, Martha said in a small voice, "You've really grown strong." "I haven't grown strong," Amy replied. "I've just become honest with myself." After ending the call, Amy picked up a framed photograph on her desk. It was the cover of the inaugural issue of A Taste of Chicago. She and Jacob were pictured side by side, her eyes shining with joy and pride. There was a knock at the door, and Jacob peeked in. "Ready?" he asked, with a gentle smile. "I'd like to talk before the party." Amy nodded and picked up her coat. After leaving the office, Jacob led her not to Lucille but toward a small park. In the falling snow, under trees decorated with illuminations, Jacob took her hand. "My life has changed since meeting you," he said with a sincere expression. "Your passion for cooking, your honesty and your strength, I'm inspired by them every day." He took a small box from his pocket. "It might be too soon, but I want to take our relationship to the next step. Of course, our working relationship won't change even if your answer is no. But I wanted to express my feelings." Amy was speechless at the engagement ring in the box. As her chest filled with joy and surprise, she suddenly remembered her family. "There's something I need to tell you," she said with a serious expression. "My family is in a difficult situation right now." She revealed everything about the phone call with her mother. Without hiding anything, she honestly conveyed what she was thinking and feeling. After quietly listening, Jacob smiled gently. "I'll support whatever decision you make," he said. "But let me say one thing. People make mistakes. Your family is no different. However, if they're truly trying to change, isn't it important to give them that opportunity?" Amy savored Jacob's words, enjoying the sensation of snow touching her cheeks. "You're right," she finally answered. "I don't intend to completely abandon them. But to rebuild a healthy relationship, they need to change too. And I want to have the strength not to be trapped by past wounds." She looked at Jacob and reached for the ring. "My answer is yes," she smiled. "And I'll contact my family tomorrow. I'll tell them that, if there's a chance to become a real family, I'm ready to rebuild our relationship." Jacob embraced her. In the snow, Christmas lights quietly shined around them. On this winter night, Amy found the path she should walk. The courage to accept new love while carrying the pain of the past, and the tolerance to explore the possibility of forgiving those who had hurt her. She finally realized, true strength is about standing up, moving forward, and sometimes extending a hand. "The guests will be arriving soon," the waiter announced politely. Amy looked around the private room of Embrace, Monroe Restaurant Group's new flagship restaurant. 5 years had passed, and her life had progressed in a direction she couldn't have imagined. Her best-selling cookbook was now in its 3rd edition, and the food festival she produced was held across the United States. Her marriage to Jacob was entering its 3rd year, and they were walking together not just in business but in life. "Is the cake ready?" Amy called toward the kitchen. "Perfect," the chef answered with a confident voice. Tonight was a special night. In a way, it was the conclusion of a story that began on that Christmas 5 years ago. Amy took a deep breath and looked out the window. Chicago's night view was beautifully shining. The door opened and the first guest entered. Brooke came toward her with a smile. Behind her stood a young man holding a small cake box. It was David, Brooke's fiancé. "I baked this myself," Brooke said, opening the cake box. "I'm still learning," but Amy couldn't hide her surprise that her sister would one day bake a cake herself. While her father's company was being rebuilt, Brooke had to reorganize her own life. After trial and error, she had opened a small bakery, which had now grown into a locally beloved shop. "It's lovely," Amy said sincerely. "The decoration has really improved too." Her parents appeared next. Richard and Martha looked older than before, but their expressions harbored humility and gentleness. "Sorry we're late," Martha said. "The volunteer work at the food bank took longer than expected." After recovering from the brink of bankruptcy, Martha had begun working at a food bank as a way of giving back to the community. Initially, there may have been thoughts of for image's sake, but gradually she found true joy in helping others. Richard, being embraced by his daughter, said in a small voice, "Thanks to you, we've learned many things." His company survived, albeit scaled down, and now it had built a business model that prioritized honesty and transparency. Finally, Jacob entered the room. After greeting everyone, he stood next to Amy and gently held her hand. "Now, let's enjoy the special meal prepared for tonight," Jacob announced. On the table was a special course jointly designed by Amy and Jacob. It was a menu that expressed Amy's journey from the early days of her food blog to the present. As the meal progressed, conversation flowed naturally. Gone were the tension and fake smiles of the past. Each person honestly shared their successes, failures, hopes, and dreams. At dessert time, Amy stood up and took her glass. 5 years ago at Christmas, I reached a turning point in my life at another restaurant in the city, she began quietly. That night, I learned many things. That true value isn't in things or money, but in respecting and supporting each other. And above all, the importance of living honestly with oneself. She looked at each family member. We have each walked our own paths. There have been difficulties, But I believe those experiences have helped us grow into better people. Tears gleamed in Martha's eyes. Brooke quietly nodded. Richard listened silently, holding deep thoughts. We've gathered tonight not to forget the past, but to celebrate the beginning of a new relationship. The beginning of a relationship where we recognize and respect our differences, yet still support each other as family. Amy looked at Jacob, and he stood up too. They held hands and smiled at everyone. We have a special announcement, Jacob said. Next spring, we'll be welcoming a new member to our family. The room was filled with cheers and tears. While the old fractures might not be completely healed, the hope of a new life's birth gave them an opportunity for true reconciliation. As snow quietly accumulated on the window panes, Amy thought from her heart. Life is unpredictable. Sometimes it gives suffering, sometimes unexpected gifts. But what truly matters is not losing yourself on that journey and continuing to have the courage to love. That was the secret of happiness she had found.